Scott Peterson's guilty. The jurors have spoken.
Scott Peterson stared ahead emotionless as the verdicts were read. One juror glared at him. You could hear gasps and weeping from both of the families.
Then outside, the crowd lashes out at Scott Peterson's mother. And why this case transfixed America. What fueled the fascination.
People want to have justice done in this case.
Then, now that it's over, see what the first juror kicked off the case tells Deborah Norville, and the impact of Amber, how Scott Peterson's lies, secretly recorded by Amber Fry, may have done him in.
So is this baby yours?
I cannot tell you everything.
You can't tell me everything. That's a simple yes or no.
Plus, what Lacey Peterson's closest friends told only Inside Edition about Scott's feelings about being a father. Inside Edition with Deborah Norville.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. After a 5.5-month trial, the jury deciding the fate of Scott Peterson has spoken. Peterson is guilty of 2 counts of murder in the first degree for his wife, Lacey, in the second degree for his unborn son, Connor. Jim Murray reports on the dramatic verdict and the scene at the courthouse in Redwood City, California.
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Lacey Denise Peterson.
That's how Scott Peterson heard the jury's dramatic verdict, guilty of first-degree murder.
We, the jury, further find the degree of the murder to be that of the first degree.
Scott Peterson stared ahead, emotionless, as the verdicts were read. One juror glared at him. You could hear gasps and weeping from both of the families. Jackie Peterson, Scott's mother, wept uncontrollably. And this is how huge crowds outside the court reacted as they heard the verdict on loudspeakers. As Scott Peterson's mother, Jackie, was escorted from the court, people in the crowd heckled and taunted her. One person shouted, "You must be very proud of your son." Another shouted, "May he rot in hell." The jury's full verdict was guilty of first-degree murder of Lacey Peterson, guilty of second-degree murder of their unborn son, Connor. Gloria Allred, who represented star witness Amber Fry, was cheered by the crowd outside the courthouse. She welcomed the verdict.
Before I went in to hear the verdict, I said that I was praying for justice. I know that millions of people in this country were praying for justice.
Peterson's defense attorney, Mark Garagos, was not in court. He was delayed in Los Angeles. Scott's father was also a no-show. The defense and prosecution teams remained under a gag order, but there was immediate reaction from a small army of experts who have followed this trial.
I mean, what crossed my heart and my mind was justice for Sharon Rocha. The most visible, audible reaction in that courtroom was the uncontrollable tears of relief out of Sharon Rocha. And as a former prosecutor, that's what stung out is some sense of relief for her.
Former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Chuck Smith.
This is my county. I've been here for 27 years. I'm proud of those 12 people because they are citizens of my county. And their collective wisdom, they figured it out, and in my opinion, they came to the right decision. So good for them. They did what juries are supposed to do.
I do disagree with the verdict. I was there about 3 times. I know the evidence a fair amount, and I just didn't see the proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Criminal defense attorney Mickey Sherman said he was surprised by the verdict.
Only God, Scott Peterson, or the real killers know for sure whether or not there's been an injustice here. We all may have opinions, and we're all going to be discussing this and debating this as we have OJ and several other cases over the years. That's what we have a jury system for.
Scott Peterson faces the death penalty by legal injection or life in prison, a sentence which will be decided during the penalty phase of the trial, which Judge Alfred DeLucia has set for November 22nd. That penalty phase is expected to last for 4 days. And when sentencing does occur, it will mark the end to a case that has captivated America for nearly 2 years. April Woodard looks back at the many twists and turns of the Lacey Peterson murder case and why it so engrossed us.
For 5.5 months, the nation has been riveted by the Scott Peterson trial, considered one of the most captivating criminal cases of the past few years. It has saturated TV shows and magazines.
It's definitely a hot topic of conversation everywhere.
Lisa Bloom of Court TV.
Women in particular, I think, across the country are glued to the Scott Peterson case because they very much want to see justice for Lacey and for Connor.
The newly configured jury in Scott Peterson's murder trial.
Every morning show has devoted time to the case. Cable shows have done wall-to-wall coverage, responding to viewers' insatiable appetite for any information about the case. Elizabeth Glick, assistant managing editor of People magazine.
I think the fact that she was 8 months pregnant was a big part of the public fascination. I think the fact that she disappeared on Christmas Eve, leaving a decorated nursery and a Christmas tree with a teddy bear under it that had her baby's name on it. I just think all of that added to this pathos and the drama of the case.
Aphrodite Jones is a Fox News analyst who explains why people are closely examining how the legal system has worked in this case.
It's not a matter that it's just TV. Truly, I think people want to have justice done in this case. They don't want another OJ.
The case made the cover of People magazine 4 times. One of the reasons the public paid so much attention to the trial is because of the image of the central characters.
It's a classic family saga. You have a young, attractive couple with everything, a bright future ahead of them. They're going to have a baby. They live in a lovely house. They have supportive extended families. And yet, clearly, there's a darker side to Scott.
The celebrated trial even generated a controversial made-for-TV movie with actor Dean Cain playing Scott Peterson.
This is real live television, reality TV at its best.
In the aftermath of the verdict, viewers will certainly continue to analyze the Scott Peterson case with the help of all the coverage.
The newly constituted jury deliberated for only a total of 8 hours before reaching their guilty verdicts. They remain under a gag order, so it's impossible to know at this time what influenced their thinking. But Justin Falconer is a former juror, the first to be removed, and he joins me now live. Justin, what do you think pushed that jury to vote to convict?
You know, I'd like to know. Like I said, I've been sitting here for a long time saying that there's enough reasonable doubt that I couldn't possibly see a verdict. But, you know, obviously they saw a lot more than I did. They made probably the right choice. I mean, I have no doubt that they did. They're very competent people. And, you know, I don't know what it was. I can't wait till they come out. I can't wait till they tell their stories because I think it's going to be very interesting.
There were 5 days of deliberations. Then everything changed and 2 jurors left and 2 came in. I know you know all of them. What do you think changed when those 2 jurors entered the jury pool to make them so easily able to make a decision pretty quickly?
Yeah, I think you took you took the doctor out of there, and I think you took out a person who was very analytical and who was looking at the evidence. I think that's who, where he was really focused on was the evidence. He wasn't emotional about it. I'm going to have to say that a lot of the jurors in that room were probably going off a lot more emotion than they were evidence. So I think, later on when we find out what exactly what brought them to their conclusions is going to be very interesting, and I can't wait to hear it.
I wonder if Mark Garagos had introduced evidence that would have given the jury somewhere else to hang their hat, someone else who could have murdered Lacey Peterson, because that's not something they ever got to see, if the vote might have gone differently, because they were under orders, only consider what was presented in court.
You know, you're absolutely right, and there was a lot of promises that Mark Garagos made in the very beginning of the trial that I was looking forward to. He said there was going to be witnesses that saw Lacey. He said there was going to be, he was going to give us all these other options, and in the very end he didn't. Now, I know he got a lot of points out of a lot of the prosecution witnesses, and we heard about these witnesses through police officers and through other testimony, but in the end we never got to see him on the defense's side, so we had nothing, the jurors had nothing from his side. So I think it would have helped, I really do, but we'll never know.
You got the boot because you were seen speaking to the brother there at the entrance of the court. Do you wish you'd been there for that final deliberation?
Yeah, of course I do. This is obviously a big thing. It's consumed my life, it's consumed everybody else's life as well. So yeah, of course I wish I was there, but I mean, in the end,
would you have voted the way the jury voted?
You know what? I don't know. It's very possible that I would have. Very possible I wouldn't have. I can tell you this, I wouldn't have folded. If I believed that he was guilty, then I would have voted guilty. But if I didn't believe that beyond a reasonable doubt, then there's no way that I would have folded. I would have sat there and hung that jury.
All right. Justin Falconer, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Certainly one of the more intriguing characters in this whole story has been Amber Fry, Scott Peterson's former mistress. Her testimony was considered by most to be a turning point in the trial. Paul Boyd now with a look at the massage therapist who was reluctantly thrust into the media spotlight.
This has been a painful and stressful time for me. Amber Frey was both brave and bold to come forward as the other woman in the life of Scott Peterson, whose pregnant wife Lacey vanished on Christmas Eve 2002. But who is this tall, slender blonde who says she had no idea she was part of a love triangle?
I want to express my sympathy to Lacey's family. My heart goes out to them for the loss of their daughter and their grandson.
Amber Frey is a single mother raising 2 children. She lives in Fresno, California, where she works as a massage therapist. Our own Jim Moray spoke with the man who knows her best, her father, Ron Frey. At the beginning of the trial, in his first ever sit-down interview, he told Inside Edition how Amber fell for the smooth-talking Peterson.
You believe your daughter was in love with Scott Peterson?
I know for a fact she was in love with Scott Peterson. There would have been something wrong with her if she wouldn't have fallen for him. The things he did and said, most women would wish they'd have somebody like him pursuing them.
And Amber's father told Inside Edition that her romance with Scott was such a whirlwind affair that after just 1 month of dating, the two were actually discussing marriage.
I think he might still be in love with her. The man couldn't give up. Even with his missing wife, he couldn't stop calling.
It's an emotional time for her. Her feelings are very complicated.
Attorney Gloria Allred spoke about her client moments after the verdict was read.
She's always said that this is a matter for the jury to decide, and that God would be the ultimate judge.
Did she cry?
I'm going to let her have her privacy about how she feels today. I think it all has to settle in, but I know she's had confidence that the jury would do whatever they thought was the right thing based on the evidence, and I think that they have.
Amber Frey was at her home in Fresno, California when the verdict was returned, and she got news of the conviction from her attorney, Gloria Allred.
Next, the impact of the Amber tapes.
The girl I got married to, her name is Lacey. She disappeared just before Christmas.
Lie after lie by Scott Peterson, recorded by Amber Frey. Did they do him in? Then, Lacey Peterson's close friends. They were pregnant when she was pregnant. They were in the same prenatal exercise class. See what they say Lacey told them about Scott's feelings on becoming a father.
Did she say whether or not he was happy about becoming a father?
And shocking statistics. Murder is a leading cause of death a pregnant woman can face. The numbers will shock you. Inside Edition with Deborah Norville will be right back.
November's a busy month for us here at Inside Edition. Here's a look at some of the stories we've got coming up for you.
All next week on Inside Edition, America loves the hit TV show Desperate Housewives. Now meet real-life desperate husbands. What really goes on when the women go to work and the men run the house?
We call him the sexiest mom in Brentwood.
What do these guys do all day? We're inside the homes of desperate husbands.
Then, could selling something put your life on the line?
We were selling something on the newspaper, and they came over and tried to steal it.
From a classified ad to a crime.
I see so many people giving their home address, and their home phone number.
We need someone now. My dad is hurt. Please hurry.
Plus, what's your pet doing when you're not home? Inside Edition captures the action on camera. The secret lives of pets. All month long, don't miss a minute of Inside Edition.
In his closing argument, defense attorney Mark Garagos told the jury that Scott Peterson was a liar and a cheat, but that wasn't enough to convict a man. Still, audio tapes of Peterson with his former mistress Amber Frey were critical evidence that didn't help Peterson's case. Paul Boyd with a look back at those damning tapes.
It was perhaps the most damning evidence the jury heard in this dramatic trial. Bitter exchanges between Amber Frey and Scott Peterson over his lies and his wife's disappearance. In one call, a week after Lacey disappeared, she accuses him of lying, not just to her, but to America.
I lied to you about, where I was.
You've lied to a nation, Scott.
No, I haven't.
Oh, yes, you have.
No, I haven't.
I beg to differ.
Amber gets angry after Scott implies she might have had some involvement in Lacey's fate.
My hands are clean of this, Scott.
Oh, I know, and I'm the one that lied to you.
Exactly.
And put you in this position.
Exactly. So where do you think that people are going to think this they're not going to think your behavior is innocent?
No, of course not. No, they won't. You're right. Of course they won't.
Over and over, Amber presses Scott, looking for a slip or an admission. Scott had told Amber he had lost his wife, and Christmas 2002 would be the first holidays without her. Amber questioned Scott with the skill of a prosecutor.
But isn't it so ironic that she's so missing before the first holidays? Are you following me, Scott?
That sounds pretty sinister, you're right.
Pretty sinister?
But it is not the case.
What's the case, Scott?
The case is that she's missing, and we don't know who has her and what happened to her, and we're looking for her.
She even accuses him outright of knowing where Lacey is.
Well, at this point, that just leads me to believe that you do know where she is.
I do not know where she is. I wish I did.
The tapes were too much for Lacey's family to bear. Her mother, Sharon Rocha, left court early that day, but ultimately, those tapes helped close this horrible chapter in her life.
As you know, Lacey Peterson was expecting her first child when she died, a little boy she planned to call Connor. And that birth was the most important thing in her life. Stacey Galante on Lacey Peterson's final days.
We learned more about the final days of Lacey Peterson's life last year when we met 3 women with whom she shared the incredible bond of motherhood.
People say that pregnant women always have a glow about them, but Lacey glowed a little bit brighter than some other people.
Hold yourself right out over that leg.
Lacey spent the last months of her pregnancy in Debbie Volsky's prenatal yoga class in Modesto.
The last time she visited the studio was December 20th, so that was just 4 days before her disappearance. And the baby had shifted and dropped, and she was pretty uncomfortable.
Mika Crick and Elizabeth Tiveldi understood what Lacey was going through. They were a little further along than Lacey was with Connor.
Did she seem to be the typical mother-to-be? Was she asking a lot of questions?
Yeah, at the beginning, she wanted to know how long would the nausea last and how long would the dizzy spells last. She just seemed really kind of reserved.
During the trial, there has been speculation that Scott Peterson really didn't want this baby.
When Lacey talked about Scott, did she say whether or not he was happy about becoming a father?
I did ask her one time point blank about if her husband was excited for the baby. And her response was not really pro or con either way.
You ever thought as to why that is now, or?
No. I wish I had pressed maybe for some deeper meaning to her silence.
One thing Lacey did share with the women, how she decorated Connor's room.
She had painted the baby's room blue. She was thinking a nautical theme.
How ironic that Lacey and Connor were found in the choppy waters of San Francisco Bay. And a final irony. Lacey's friends play with their newborns, babies who will never ride on the swing set with Connor or meet the woman behind a sweet smile, a smile that touched the soul of everyone who met her. And they remembered Lacey with a candlelight shrine at the Village Yoga Center.
I'm very happy that I got to know her, and our lives crossed. I'll never forget her.
Lacey's mother, Sharon Rocha, is expected to testify during the penalty phase about the grandson she'll never know and the 27-year-old daughter she lost. More to come on the Peterson case. Did you know it is not that rare for a father-to-be involved in the murder of the mother of his unborn child? A look at that and more when we come back.
Production assistance for Inside Edition provided by...
It's time to think inside the box. Juicy beef, 2 kinds of beans, tomatoes, onions, peppers, preservative-free. It's all inside. Stag chili is the chili lovers love.
Stay tuned. There's more Inside Edition to come.
Scott Peterson is guilty of 2 counts of murder, but he's not the only father involved in the death of the mother of his unborn child. April Woodard reports it's much more common than you might think.
As the world wonders how could anyone kill a mother-to-be, several recent studies conclude that the #1 cause of death for pregnant women is murder. University of Maryland Dr. Kara Krolwich conducted her own study on deaths of pregnant women in Washington, D.C., finding that 43% died from murder.
It was an unexpected finding.
The startling statistics bring to mind a flood of famous cases where pregnant women were killed. In 1989, Charles Stewart claimed he and his pregnant wife, Carol, were shot by a stranger on a Boston street. He made this dramatic 911 call.
Has your wife been shot as well?
Yes, in the head.
But after a lengthy investigation, it turned out that it was actually Charles Stewart who pulled the trigger, killing his wife and unborn baby. Stewart ultimately killed himself. Sandra Adams' 25-year-old pregnant daughter, Sharika, was killed when her boyfriend, star of the NFL's Carolina Panthers, Ray Caruth, had 3 men gun her down. Moments after being shot in her car, Sharika called 911.
What part of the body been shot at? I don't know.
She was so excited to be pregnant. She would have never suspected that someone that she cared about and loved could be thinking of murder.
Caruth was convicted of conspiring to commit murder. We'll have more Inside Edition after this.
Production assistance for Inside Edition provided by...
I wear black, even a little dandruff shows.
And my old dandruff shampoo wasn't doing enough.
So I switched to Selsun Blue Moisturizing Shampoo. Doctor recommended.
For healthier hair and scalp.
Never wear black without the blue.
Selsun Blue.
Stay tuned. There's more Inside Edition to come.
The flip side of the TV hit show, Desperate Husbands.
Next Inside Edition, America loves the hit TV show Desperate Housewives. Now meet real-life desperate husbands. What really goes on when the wives go to work?
There's going to be women watching this saying, boy, he is the perfect husband.
But what do these guys do all day?
Unlike Terry Hatcher's character, I can in fact cook.
Real-life desperate husbands. Plus, now that the guilty verdicts come down in the Scott Peterson case, Inside Edition is on the scene with exclusive details and reaction. Watch the next Inside Edition.
And that is Inside Edition. I'm Deborah Norville. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.